Quick question. Do you know where your last paycheck actually went? Because the answer might disappear faster than you think. The moment that paycheck lands, your brain has already started making decisions with money that was supposed to build your future. Not rent. Not the car payment. I mean the small stuff. The $6 here, the $14 there. The things that don't feel important enough to notice until they're gone. If you can't answer that in the next 5 seconds, you're not alone. Something like 3 out of 5 people, right now, say they're living paycheck to paycheck. Not people in crisis. Not people who don't work hard. Regular people. Regular income. Somehow still one bad week away from feeling behind. And the strange part is, the problem usually isn't the paycheck. It's what happens in the first few minutes after the money arrives. Because 2 people can earn the exact same amount, live in the same city, and 5 years from now be standing in completely different places. One wonders where it all went. The other quietly built something. In this video, I'll show you the exact system that changes what happens to your money before spending ever gets a chance to decide. Your phone buzzes. Direct deposit. That little drop in your stomach, then relief. You check the balance. Bigger number than yesterday. For a second, everything feels fine. You don't calculate anything. You don't need to. The number's enough. 10 days later, you open the app again. Smaller number. You scroll back through the charges like you're looking at a stranger's spending, not your own. Most people miss this part completely. It's not about being careless. Most people living this way work hard, pay their bills, and they're tired by the time they get home. Tired people don't plan. They react. So the real question nobody asks is this. What if the money that matters most was never supposed to reach your hands in the first place? Not hidden from you. Just moved automatically before you ever get the chance to decide about it. That's the entire difference between 2 people making the exact same paycheck. One of them is reacting to whatever's left after 2 weeks of small decisions nobody remembers making. The other one already moved the important part somewhere else. The same day the money landed. What's left in their account isn't left over. It's just theirs, because everything else already happened without them. I'm Nathan. I spend an unreasonable amount of time thinking about why some paychecks build wealth and others disappear. If that second one sounds familiar, stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll see exactly why it happens. And hit subscribe if you want the rest of this, because the fix is smaller than you think. It starts with one question. What happens to your money in the first hour it exists, before you've had a single chance to want anything at all? Picture the most normal money routine there is. Paycheck lands. Bills go out, rent, electric, phone, then the fun part. Dinner out, new shoes, that thing in the cart since last Tuesday. Whatever's left after all that is supposed to become savings, except there's never anything left. Not because people don't earn enough, because saving goes last in line, and whoever goes last rarely gets fed. And the numbers back that up. Surveys on this consistently find that fewer than half of Americans could cover a $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. Think of a bucket with a hole near the bottom. Doesn't matter how much you pour in, the water finds the hole before it reaches the top. That's what saving whatever's left actually is. Pouring into something that was never built to hold anything. Most advice misses this completely. Save more. Skip the latte. That's just pouring faster into a bucket with a hole in it. You're not fixing anything. You're working harder inside something broken. When saving depends on remembering, resisting, getting it right every single time, you've built a trap that catches almost everyone eventually. Willpower isn't broken, it's just inconsistent. Strong on Tuesday morning, gone by Friday night. So the real question was, never how do I save more? It's why does saving only happen if everything else goes right first? That's move 1. Not more effort, a different order. Deciding what gets protected before deciding what gets spent. There's a belief almost everyone carries, and it sounds so reasonable that nobody stops to question it. If I just made more, this would all sort itself out. Test it, though, and something strange happens. Income goes up. The pressure doesn't go down. Not for long. There's a real pattern behind this. Someone making $80,000 a year and someone making $50,000 a year can end up with the exact same amount saved at the end of the year. Sometimes the lower earner saves more. None of it feels reckless. Each choice feels fine on its own. That's exactly what makes it dangerous. A few months later, same tightness, same feeling of barely keeping up. Except now it's happening at a bigger number. There's a name for this: lifestyle inflation. Spending rises right alongside income, filling whatever space opens up almost automatically. More income doesn't buy security on its own. Without something deciding what happens to those dollars first, more income just buys a more expensive version of the same cycle, which means the real question isn't how do I earn more? It's what do I actually need? And what have I just been calling a need because it's easier than deciding? Move 2 starts with a word that gets used constantly without ever getting questioned: need. I need my coffee. I need this subscription. I need a car that looks decent when I pull up somewhere. Say it out loud and nobody blinks because it sounds like fact. The brain hates deciding things twice. So instead of asking, do I want this today, it does something cheaper. It files the thing under need once and never has to think about it again. Take that daily coffee. $5 a day, 5 days a week, $25. Doesn't feel like anything on a Tuesday? Add it up over a year and it's around $1,300. Still doesn't feel like much, 1 cup at a time. But invest that same $1,300 a year for 10 years at a normal market return, and you're looking at somewhere close to $20,000. Not from a raise, from one recurring $5 decision that never got questioned. Now stretch that same math across a car payment that's a little bigger than it needs to be, a stack of subscriptions nobody's used this month, a phone upgraded out of habit instead of necessity. None of these on their own feel like the thing standing between you and getting ahead. That's the whole point. They were never designed to feel that way. This isn't about guilt, and it's not about cutting every small pleasure out of your life. It's one honest question. Run against everything leaving your account every month. Would this still happen if I had to consciously choose it every single time instead of it just happening on its own? Rent passes that test easily. Groceries pass it. Insurance passes it. A lot of other things don't, and that gap is usually bigger than anyone expects. That's move 2. Separate what's a genuine need from what's just a well-defended want before anything else in this system can work. There's a version of this almost everyone's tried. Payday hits and there's a quiet promise made. This time I'll be careful. First few days, it works. Spending feels intentional. Then a week passes. Work gets exhausting. Something unexpected comes up, and that careful version of you from payday morning is nowhere to be found by Thursday night. Tired, scrolling, ordering something without thinking about it. There's an actual name for this: decision fatigue. Every choice during the day draws from the same limited pool of mental energy. What to wear, what to eat, how to respond to a message. Studies on this have found something striking. Judges granting parole approve requests far more often earlier in the day than right before a break. If a trained judge's judgment slips by late afternoon, yours probably does too, standing in a checkout line after a 10-hour shift. Picture the start of a pay period versus the end of one. Early on, there's room, there's optimism. By the end, the account's thinner. The patience is thinner too. And a want slides through with barely a second thought. Because saying no one more time, after saying no 20 times that week, feels like too much to ask of yourself. This is exactly why just be more disciplined was never going to work. Not because discipline doesn't matter, because it assumes discipline is unlimited, available on command, every time money shows up for the rest of your life. Nobody's wired that way. If willpower runs out by design, the fix was never finding more of it. The fix is removing the moment it gets tested in the first place. But before that removal can happen, there's something sitting in the way for a lot of people. Something quietly working against every move covered so far. Move 3 has to happen before almost anything else because it's the one thing actively working against every other move on this list. High interest debt, credit cards, overdraft lines. The kind of balance that doesn't just sit there. It grows, whether or not anyone's paying attention to it. Imagine carrying a $5,000 balance and paying only the minimum every month. It feels manageable on paper. It isn't. At a typical credit card rate, and the average right now sits somewhere around 20 to 25%, that balance can take over 15 years to clear, and you'll end up paying more in interest than the original $5,000 you borrowed. There is no responsible, reliable investment anywhere that beats 25%. Not stocks, not real estate. Nothing a normal person has access to. Someone could be doing everything else right. Separating needs from wants, protecting money before spending it. But If there's a balance growing in the background at 22%, that growth outruns almost anything they could earn putting that same money anywhere else instead. This is exactly why debt like this comes before the fixed expenses, before the emergency fund, before investing. Not because carrying debt is shameful, because every dollar sent toward that balance while it's compounding against you is worth more than that same dollar sitting anywhere else. Earning less than what the debt is costing, that's move 3. High interest debt. First, specifically, because it's the one thing on this list actively working against every dollar you earn until it's gone. Move 4 is the foundation everything else has to sit on top of. Fixed expenses. Rent or the mortgage, utilities, transportation, basic groceries, insurance. The stuff that gets paid no matter what, no matter how the week's going. Picture 2 people with the same paycheck. One's fixed costs eat up around 55% of it. The other's fixed costs eat up closer to 80%. Same number landing in the account every couple weeks, but the second person starts every single pay period already cornered. No room for debt payoff, no room for a cushion, no room for investing. Most financial planners land on a similar range for this reason. Keep true fixed costs at roughly 50 to 60% of take-home pay, not more. This is what gets misunderstood constantly. When someone in that second position struggles to save, the usual verdict is that they lack discipline. That's almost never what's actually happening. The math doesn't work. You can't allocate money that's already gone. This is exactly why this range matters and why it comes right after debt, not somewhere further down the list. If the foundation itself is oversized, a car payment too aggressive, an apartment that's a stretch, no amount of good intention downstream fixes that. So the real question isn't how do I try harder to save? It's does my foundation actually leave room for anything else to exist? That's move 4. Get the fixed range under control and something opens up that wasn't there before. Actual room. The next move needs in order to start building. Move 5 is the one most people picture as some giant distant number instead of what it actually is. Imagine your car breaks down tomorrow. $300 for the repair. Not catastrophic, but enough to throw off the entire month if there's nothing set aside for it. For millions of people, that single unplanned expense is enough to create a real crisis. And the numbers back that up. Research has found that fewer than half of Americans could actually cover a $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. Most people imagine an emergency fund needs to be 6 months of expenses, fully built before it counts for anything. That thinking is backwards. Even a small amount sitting there untouched absorbs the kind of surprise that would otherwise become new debt. Research from places like Vanguard has found that having even $2,000 set aside measurably increases people's financial well-being. Not because $2,000 is a lot of money, but because it's enough. Someone with nothing set aside reaches for a credit card the moment that car breaks down. And now there's new debt stacking on top of whatever was already being paid down. Someone with even a small cushion just pays it. Doesn't think twice. From there, it grows. A little each pay period, sitting somewhere it can actually be reached in a hurry. Not tied up anywhere that takes days to access, not risked anywhere it could lose value right when it's needed. This is the piece most people skip, and it's exactly why the same emergency keeps happening to the same people, landing back on a credit card at 22% every single time. That's move 5. Build it in layers, starting small, and the next surprise bill stops being a step backward. It just becomes something that already had a place to land. Move 6 sounds backwards the first time you hear it. Investing doesn't wait for the emergency fund to finish. It starts in parallel, small, running the entire time that cushion's being built. $1 invested at 25 doesn't behave anything like $1 invested at 35. Run the math on investing $200 a month at a typical 8% average return. Starting at 25 gets you to over $500,000 by 65. Starting at 35, same amount, same return, gets you to roughly $220,000. 10 years of waiting costs almost half the final number. Not the contributions, the waiting. Someone sets aside a small slice every payday. Not much. Barely noticeable next to rent, next to groceries. It goes in before anything else gets a chance to claim it. No decision required. No moment where willpower gets tested. 5 years in, that small slice looks like something. 10 years in, it looks completely different because growth stacks on top of growth, and the earliest dollars in have had the longest to do that stacking. That's move 6. It doesn't need to be big to matter. It just needs to start early, and it needs to happen before anything else gets a vote. This is the actual mechanism that makes all 6 moves happen without relying on you remembering a single one of them. Not motivation, not discipline. A transfer that runs automatically, the same day the paycheck lands, before a single dollar gets the chance to become a decision. Set it up once, fixed range covered, a slice into the cushion, a slice into investing. All of it scheduled to move out on payday, the same way rent gets scheduled, the same way a phone bill gets paid without anyone remembering to think about it each month. This works even for someone who's tried and failed to save 100 times before, because it doesn't rely on willpower at all. It happens whether or not that person feels motivated that week, whether they're exhausted, distracted, having the best day of their year, or the worst one. The transfer doesn't check in with any of that. Compare that to the version everyone's tried before, deciding every single payday to manually move money into savings. That version asks for a fresh decision every 2 weeks, forever, competing against decision fatigue, against a bad day, against everything already covered about why willpower runs out. Automating removes that decision completely. There's nothing left to decide. It already happened. Every dollar left in the checking account after that transfer runs is genuinely available, not money someone's supposed to feel guilty about spending, not money secretly earmarked for something else, just the amount that's actually truly free to use because everything important already left before it had the chance to compete with anything. Most people get this backwards. They try to protect money by being careful with what's in front of them. But money in front of you is money that has to be defended every single day against a tired brain and a hard week. Money that's already gone somewhere else doesn't need defending at all. Something important almost nobody talks about. This system isn't supposed to stay the same forever. It's supposed to shift on purpose as each move finishes its job. Picture the moment that high-interest debt finally hits zero. For months, maybe years, a slice of every paycheck was going straight toward it. That slice doesn't just disappear once the debt's gone. It has to go somewhere. And if nobody actively decides where, it quietly slides back into regular spending without anyone noticing. So the moment debt clears, that freed up slice gets redirected. Straight into investing. Immediately, on purpose, before it has the chance to just dissolve into nothing. Same thing happens once the cushion reaches that 3 to 6 month target. All those payday transfers that used to build it up don't stop being useful just because the cushion's full. They get redirected too. Investing gets a noticeably bigger slice than it had before because the thing it used to compete with for space isn't competing anymore. As debt disappears and the cushion fills and investing ramps up, there's room now for something that wasn't really there before. A slice growing a little each year meant for nothing but enjoying life. Not guilt money. Not whatever's left if you're lucky. An actual, deliberate slice. This isn't a return to spending without thinking, it's the opposite. It's spending that's finally allowed to exist because everything underneath it is already covered. That leftover slice, the one meant for wanting things, isn't something to feel guilty about. Not once the other 6 moves are already covered. That coffee on the way to work, that dinner out on a random Tuesday, just because those shoes that finally leave the cart. None of it has to come with that quiet, nagging math running in the background. Should I be spending this? Is this the thing that's going to set me back? Because it isn't. It can't be. Everything that actually mattered already left the account before this slice ever got touched. Spending money that was deliberately set aside for exactly this purpose doesn't carry that residue at all. It was planned. There's nothing to defend. That's the whole shift. Not depriving yourself into some spreadsheet-shaped life. Building something underneath the spending so the spending itself finally gets to be simple again. Remember that first 10 days. The phone buzzing, the little drop in your stomach, the relief. Remember scrolling back through charges 10 days later, looking at a stranger's spending. That doesn't have to be the story anymore. 6 moves, needs separated from wants, high interest debt gone, fixed costs in a range that leaves room to breathe, a cushion built in layers, investing running quietly since day 1. All of it automatic, before you ever get the chance to decide otherwise. Same paycheck, Same amount landing every couple weeks, but now something happens to it before you ever get the chance to want anything at all. A slice protected, a slice growing. And whatever's left actually, honestly yours to enjoy without a single second thought. You don't need to earn more to feel different about money. You just need something deciding before you do where it goes. That's it. That's the whole system. If this changed how you're thinking about your next paycheck, that's exactly why I made it. Hit subscribe because there's a lot more where this came from.